Everybody knows a young man that's struggling. When we go into a school, the first thing we do is we win their respect. And we do that by being honest ourselves, telling our stories about the choices we made, the consequences we suffered, the belief systems we've held about ourselves.
Boys to Men for Spring Valley Middle School. I don't think I even have the words. I well up just thinking about it. One of the common things I see in most of them, if not all of them, is the fact that there is not a male role model in their family. And so they come with a lot of heartache, they come with that anger, and that doesn't go well in a classroom. So these young men really need to have something more than what teachers can give them. And even with extra time from our deans and counselors, it wasn't having the impact the Boys to Men has had. When you put a group of men that can take the time and have the life experience they have to share truthfully and honestly with these boys, and be there when they have a time of need, it makes all the difference in the world.
When they're in their pain, in their grief, in their sadness, and they're sharing, then they almost get to that point of, we're all in this together. What do we got to do to get out of this? You know, how are we going to help each other out? How are we going to support each other through this? And you know, there's just comfort in that, and that's what builds the trust. And it builds the community. The trust builds the community, and the community stands for something, and they're part of something bigger than they were when they came up.
And after becoming a part of the group and really starting to unleash some of that pent-up anger and their frustration with their lives, they truly smile, and their faces just beam. They are different kids. They really are.
I think this program really saved my life, because without Boys to Men, I didn't really have anyone to trust, to talk to.
Boys to Men always have my back, no matter what happens.
I learned how to control my anger 10 times better as I did before I came here.
We all just go through the day like everything's okay, but in here we realize that it's okay to let out the anger and the tears, because we're all brothers.
I'm just talking with like a group of men who like can relate to me on my problems, and it just feels good to express how I feel.
If I had a chance to talk to every middle school administrator in this country about the one thing they could do that could make a difference, it would be Boys to Men.
Thank you, Boys to Men, for helping little boys like us go through the right path. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for being here. My name's Matt Davis, and I'm one of the founding members of Boys to Men Bay Area. I'm going to say just a little bit about our organization, what we've got going on here, and then I'm going to hand it off to Parth. He'll be your MC for the night. I see people giving me thumbs up. That either means you really like what I'm saying or be louder. This is our first time running a Zoom event like this, so let us know if you need an adjustment to really hear what's going on. And if you can mute your audio if it's not muted, and I'll be muting you if it's not, and there will be times when you're invited to speak later on. We're also going to have a game, like a sharing game, where we'll put you into breakout rooms, so you'll be one-on-one with somebody, have a chance to connect a little bit that way. But first, let me tell you what we've been up to. Like I said, I'm one of the founding members, Boys to Men Bay Area. There are 5 of us, and we've been working for about 15 months now to form this new organization. And so I'm going to tell you a bit just like how it happened for me, how I got involved. I remember there was a day where I thought to myself, I want to volunteer. I want to mentor boys. I was familiar with the Boys to Men project from my work with Mankind Project in Austin. And I thought, well, I'll volunteer with boys here in San Francisco. So I got in touch with a mentor of mine, Daniel Maldonado, and asked him to put me in touch. He connected me with Joe Sigurdson, who gave connected me with Steve Kurtog, and Steve was, regretfully informed me that there was no program in San Francisco currently. So I was under the assumption that there was just this flourishing network of mentorship programs all over the country, and it turns out that it's actually a lot of work to start a mentorship organization. So not every city has one, but turns out that transitioning from just a bunch of men with good intentions into a functional nonprofit that's welcomed into public schools to work with their children, that's a lot of work. There's background checks, insurance forms, websites, social media, online launch events like this one, and fundraising to pay for it all. Not to mention learning how to be an effective mentor who can earn the respect of the young men we work with, hopefully have a positive impact. So at this point, I'm glad that it was so much work. We met every week for 16 months. We still are meeting every week. And the men that I've been working with this whole time, Alex Munster, William Triggs, Steve Kurtog, Parth Sabla, James Foster, and now recently we've added Mark Sutton to our team. And it's been a real journey, a real adventure. We've learned a lot about each other. The amount of emotional intelligence and just earnestness and self-respect and respect for other that I witnessed with these men is it's astonishing. I feel really honored to be part of this group, and we did it. You know, we've got our organization started. We're on the path to becoming a nonprofit 501c3. We got an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with San Francisco Unified School District in November, and our team of 5 mentors have met every week with a group of about 15 boys at Hoover Middle School until the schools were shut down. But we're keeping the program alive, doing what we can, kind of reconfiguring based on the current reality, and staying optimistic for next school year. So our goal is to have 3 circles start up next school year. We're running with the requirement that to lead a circle, you need to sit in a circle for a school year. So men who have already mentored for a year in just a non-leadership role can start a circle, right? So we're going to have that kind of organic exponential growth that we've been hearing so much about lately. Try to turn it to good. So tonight I'm joined by our local team, Parth Sabla, who will be our MC tonight. He'll introduce our wonderful speakers. Really excited to hear what they have to say. We've got Steve Kurtog, William Triggs, Chi Lin, and Alex Munster, and myself as our mentor team, along with Mark Sutton and James Foster, who have been giving us administrative and moral support over the months. And Parth.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Great. We're all super grateful for all of you to be here this evening. You know, a couple of quick just logistical notes. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask around Boys to Men activities, feel free to post it in the chat window. What we'll do is we'll copy and paste that into a document and then periodically follow up on those questions. Secondly, we're hugely thankful to, in addition to it being a launch party, our original plan was to have it be a fundraiser. So we're very blessed to have somebody on the call today who is a matching donor. And so if we raise $2,500 at any point from now until, say, May 1st, or even a little bit after that, then $2,400 will be matched. And so we will be able to raise $5,000. So we're very, very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for all the other legacy leaders that are here as well, from Boys to Men USA, from San Diego, and I give you a few moments to share a little bit about yourselves a little bit later on this evening too. Next, what I'd like to do is introduce to you our first spoken word presenter. His name is Bill Amatneek. In 2001, Bill Amatneek guest edited an issue of Storytelling magazine, one he called the Men's Issue. It had comprised of 11 stories by men of the storytelling revival movement about the male experience. It became the best-selling issue in the history of the publication. Based on that success, he's now editing an anthology of men's writings titled Heart of a Man, Men's Stories for Women, slated for publication in the second quarter of this year. The writers include Michael Chabon. Some of these names you may be familiar with. The writers include Michael Chabon, Andre Dubois III, Tim O'Brien, John Updike, Philip Roth, Julius Lester, John Crawford, William Shakespeare, and 30 others, both well-known and unknown. The stories and poems are about love, romance, sports, war, women, work, and the often difficult passage from boyhood to manhood. One of the things that resonates, that's really core at the model of our Boys to Men work, is a model called LAMB, L-A-M-B, not FRAP. So which is listen, accept, model, and bless, versus the kind of the dominant narrative, which is around fixing, rescuing, advising, and protecting. So Bill's pieces are very, very powerful, centered around these themes. He's going to read his introduction to the first section in the anthology titled Boy to Man. So with that, Bill, it's all yours. I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Parth, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Boy to Man starts with physical changes. The youngster's body begins to muscle up and grow hair. His voice breaks in public one afternoon, embarrassing him. He may experience a growth spurt that makes him uncoordinated for a while. His beard starts growing. But beyond the physical changes that arrive imperceptibly, a boy's road to manhood will see a lifetime of passages, tests, competitions, and maybe initiations and battles. The journey turns hazardous while he's a boy, an out-of-control period in most men's lives. My friends and I put ourselves in jeopardy every day with risky behavior. From the time we were 7 years old, we led physical, out-on-the-streets lives, playing stickball in vacant lots, roller hockey on busy streets, football with older, bigger, merciless guys, games that sent us home limping, bruised, and beat up, tearing around the neighborhood on bicycles, dodging traffic, climbing to the tops of decrepit, abandoned buildings, picking up dirty lumber, linoleum, nails, and tiles, cutting our hands, getting stitches and tetanus shots, running, leaping, falling down hard, staging snowball fights between gangs of kids, 25 to a side, busting things up, not meaning to, although sometimes meaning to, playing hockey on a thinly iced pond miles out of town with no one else around, getting chased by a pissed off trucker after we'd pelted his rig with snowballs. "Hey, mister, we're only kids," we yelled back at him as we ran. Breaking up pumpkins on Halloween and getting caught by the cops. Bicycling to the train yard, jumping inside the tracks and bumping over the cross ties, dodging freight trains as they rolled in. Talk about stupid. Jumping back out, calling up to the engineer to throw us down a fusee, a flare, lighting that fusee, running like hell. We sustained injuries in some of these escapades, and others could have killed us, though I'm sure our lives were low risk compared to those of many other boys. Testing of strength and endurance, taking risks, running your body ragged, these are the boy's life. Our masculinity starts at this young age and has evolved over millions of years, imprinted in our genes, psyches, and minds. I can feel it. As a male navigates manhood, he faces passages and perhaps initiations. An initiation is a life-threatening trial the boy must pass to be welcomed into adulthood by his people. Traditionally, it has three parts. First, he is separated from the group, especially from women, and taken to a sacred place where one or more elder men guide him through a potentially lethal trial. If he passes, he experiences a spiritual death and birth. A boy dies, a man is born. Finally, this new soul is reintegrated with the group and allowed to take a wife. We can think of passages, on the other hand, as turnstiles of relationships and experiences that mark the man as he passes through them. His father, who he chooses for friends, his first competitive sport, first fight, first dance, first girl, first intimacy, young love, marriage, maybe divorce or divorces, his woman's first pregnancy, fatherhood, job, military service. I don't think it's scarring initiations that are missed. A boy can become man without having to survive a life-threatening initiation. It's in guidance through tricky passages, some arriving suddenly, that a boy needs the help from an older brother, friend, uncle, or other good man ready to advise the youngster. But elder guides are not always at hand during these passages. I imagine most men miss this at points in their lives. And I know that Boys to Men is making good men available to teenaged boys. They provide a safe place for boys to share their feelings, their stories, and their struggles with encouraging, listening men. And I hope some of these boys accept the next big challenge, to grow from a boy into a man they are proud to be. Boy to man, it's a journey that never ends. Every day of a guy's life sees tests of his skills and strengths. Every day, his manhood evolves.
Thank you, Bill.
You're quite welcome.
Very powerful. We're gonna turn it to our next speaker. I wish we had more time on this call, friends. I know we only have about an hour and about an hour left, just to hear everybody's reflections about that beautiful piece. Thank you, Bill. That was very powerful. Next, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Farrell. Before I do that, let me share a little bit about who Dr. Warren Farrell is and the groundbreaking work that he's done in the boy crisis and in the kind of positive, healthy male movement. So Dr. Warren Farrell has been chosen by the Financial Times as one of the world's top 100 leaders. His books have been published in over 50 countries and in 19 languages. They include 2 bestsellers, Why Men Are the Way They Are, plus The Myth of Male Power. His most recent, 2018, co-authored with John Gray, is The Boy Crisis. He will be speaking on that this evening. Dr. Farrell chairs the coalition to create a White House Council for Boys and Men, and he has been asked by the White House to do a first draft of a potential presentation for President Trump for Father's Day on the importance of dads in preventing the boy crisis. While Dr. Farrell has been called by GQ the Martin Luther King of the men's movement, with decades and decades of just deep, tremendous work, he is also the only man ever selected 3 times to the board of the National Organization for Women in New York City. So Dr. Farrell has appeared in over 1,000 TV shows and been interviewed by Oprah, Barbara Walters, Peter Jennings, Katie Couric, Larry King, and Charlie Rose. He was frequently written for and been featured in the New York Times and publications worldwide. Dr. Farrell has 2 daughters, lives with his wife in Mill Valley, California, and virtually lives on www.warrenfarrell.com. With that, Dr. Farrell would like to turn the baton over to you. where you can share maybe a little bit more about your path and your journey.
Yes, let's see. Let me give a little bit of an overview first of some of the stuff that's been happening with the Coalition to Create a White House Council on Boys and Men. I've always wanted it to be a multi-partisan group. The group originated out of a request originally that I received from the White House to be an advisor to the White House Council on Women and Girls. And I said, of course, I'd be happy to do that, but that there was also a need for a White House Council on Boys and Men. And so I was asked to do a proposal. We got 32 people, the country's experts on boys and men, both practically and also theoretically. Together, we drew up, it took 18 months to draw up a proposal about it. And we got the Boy Scouts to endorse it. They got a meeting with President Obama, and outside the Oval Office, about 30 seconds before the meeting, Valerie Jarrett crossed nothing off of the agenda that the Boy Scouts had for President Obama, except the White House Council on Boys and Men, saying it was, not the right time or the place, but she would never allow for nobody. We could never get that meeting. It was never the right time, the right place. And so part of my desire was to make sure that we had a multi-partisan group. So this past June, or April rather, we went to Iowa and interviewed 7 of the Democratic presidential candidates. And almost all of them felt that had some receptivity to the importance of understanding the boy crisis and understanding that fathers were really more important than the country had acknowledged to avert the boy crisis. However, the campaign managers, to a person, when we were able to have communication with them, were fearful that that suggesting that fathers were so important would make them lose part of their Democratic base of women who wanted to have the freedom to raise children by themselves or after divorce to be able to be the primary parent. And so none of the 7 Democratic candidates, with the exception of Andrew Yang, brought up the boy crisis as an issue at all. And Andrew only did it for a couple of seconds. And so that was the Democratic side. In the meantime, I was doing speeches around the country, and some of the people from the Trump administration asked me to speak at one of their summits and eventually invited me to the White House and said, okay, what is this boy crisis? And I explained, that it was a crisis of economic health. And I used the work that Fed Chair Jerome Powell had done to say that there were 2 crises in the United States for our future. One was the crisis of cyber warfare, and the other was the boy crisis. He said that on 60 Minutes, and when the Trump administration found out that he had, put it at that level of priority, their ears perked up. I then said it was a crisis of education, and all of you know enough about that to know the degree to which it's a crisis of education. But they were much less aware of the crisis of mental health, that when boys and girls are 9 years of age, they commit suicide about equally. When they're between 10 and 14, boys commit suicide twice as often as girls. Between 15 and 19, 4 times as often, and so on. And so that surprised them. They were surprised that it was a crisis of intellect, that boys' IQs are going down. They were surprised that it was a crisis of physical health, that males are the only ones whose life expectancy has dropped in the last 3 years consecutively, that the sperm counts of males have gone down. And so, when we were finished, their basic question was, well, what are the solutions? And the solutions that I've suggested is that first, that they're, instead of calling the national program of Trump, Make America Great Again, I suggested an overarching program called Make the American Family Great Again. What I discovered is that the Republicans get it much better than the Democrats do, that the family is crucial, that mother is crucial, that dad is crucial. I said to them that, that we have this program called No Child Left Behind, but it's impossible to achieve the outcome of no child left behind if there is a parent left behind. And since the normal parent that's left behind is the father, that we need to have a new sense of purpose for boys. Instead of the old purpose of boys being drafted and disposable in war and being trained to kill and be killed, we need to have the option, at least, for boys to be trained to love and be loved. And that requires at home, as opposed to kill and be killed away from home. And so we need to call those boys, because they're going to have to overcome lots of barriers, and people who overcome lots of social barriers can be called warriors. And so we have to train, we have to inspire boys to become a new type of warrior. When we tell boys that they are needed, when we tell men that they're needed, they're willing to die to be needed, to have purpose. And so we need to offer them an alternative sense of purpose. And so I'm suggesting to the White House a father warrior program. I was also suggesting that
Zoom call, but
the school to prison pipeline.
I'm on a Zoom call, but I don't know how to get off of it.
Something is
There we
happening.
go.
So it sounds like somebody else is talking simultaneously. Okay, so anyway, I'll continue. So that the school to prison pipeline was of concern to the White House. And I said that, one of the best ways to stop that school to prison pipeline is father involvement, because father involvement creates usually the discipline to achieve outcomes. That discipline is usually created by fathers through postponed gratification, requiring children to do something that they don't otherwise wish to do or know how to complete through discipline. And that discipline leads them to succeeding, that leads them to doing well in school or well in some type of physical activity, having more social skills and so on. And that when boys have that boundary enforcement that dads tend to bring to the family dinner, to the family table, that gives boys the ability to achieve the purpose that they set out for themselves. They then don't have resentment and anger. And then I shared with them that every single school shooting in the 21st century that has resulted in 10 or more being killed, every single one of those families that we know about, they have a lack of father involvement. That the ISIS recruits are almost all, about 90% men, but almost all of those men, and the women, by the way, have a lack of father involvement. And the prisoners, of course, are 93% male. But when I spoke to prison populations when I ran for governor some years ago, what I discovered was that the prison population is about 85 to 90% fatherless as well. And so they seem to be talking about this actively. I've talked with them about developing a male teacher corps in which males would be trained all around the country to become future teachers, and that they would receive in exchange for a scholarship to become a future teacher, that they would receive that they would have to commit to 2 or 3 years of teaching in a school system. So we would bring them into the school system, not just have them use the money for that. So there's a whole series of programs like this that I've been talking with the White House about. They may do nothing about this. The Father's Day presentation may be skipped over because of the coronavirus. It may have been skipped over anyway, I don't know, but they at least are active, involved, have drawn me into a number of meetings, and so hopefully something will come of that. And one of the clearest things that when a boy cannot have biological father involvement, the two of the most important things that he needs is mentoring that boys to men is providing. And also, you probably do know this, that even more important than finding a boy a mentor is finding another boy to mentor. That boys look up to themselves and pay attention to what they do and want to achieve when they know that they will be a role model to somebody that they are working with as a mentor. And we've found that faith-based communities are extremely important for boys, especially if those faith-based community leaders are facilitating the boys to be communicative with each other, to take off their mask of masculinity, as Ashanti Branch would put it, and hear each other's loneliness and pain. That masculinity historically has been heroic, but to be that hero, we had to be trained to die. And to be trained to die, we had to keep feelings to ourselves, not think about ourselves as sensitive and caring. And so that's created a toxicity. Feminists have it right that there is male toxicity, but they have it wrong that male toxicity comes from male privilege and male entitlement. It comes, in fact, from the males having a history of having to be become heroes by sacrificing themselves. It comes from male sacrifice, not from male privilege and entitlement. And so some of those things are the things that I've been talking with the White House about and tried to talk with the Democratic presidential candidates about less successfully. And so again, whether this happens or not, I do not know, what will in fact in the final analysis occur. The good news is that we do have the ears of HHS, Health and Human Services, the Department of Justice, the Department of Education, and the Domestic Policy Council, which is a lot more than had happened just 6 or 7 months ago. So thank you. I can't thank Boys to Men for enough for the work they're doing. This is it is so inspiring, and to turn boys' lives around. And when a boy has no role model and no ability to express feelings, and you provide that ear for him, you are really just saving not only that boy's life, but making his possibility of getting successfully married or in a relationship and having children that he parents much more successfully. You really created multiple generations. And as we all know now from epigenetics, when you have trauma in a child, that trauma can last as much as 6 generations. And so you're not just helping that boy, but you are probably helping 6 generations worth of boy.
Thank you so much, Warren, for thank you for that support, and also just sharing all the nuances of the movement that's been happening. Just to ask you one quick question, and then maybe we'll put it out here to the community because we have a little bit of time for Q&A. And this is probably a 2-part question. And I get this a lot from people who may be not familiar with this space. Is why is this important, and why is this important now? Right. Whereas before, the pendulum may have swung in one direction, and there was a lot of funding going towards, girl empowerment movements and female empowerment movements and those structures. So I guess 2-part questions. One is, why is it important now? And secondly, if we don't do something about this now, and if we don't intervene as a community, what's the predictable future if nothing changes in the next decade or 2?
Before I deal with the now part, one of the reasons it's so important, because all of us as guys and women that are presenting these issues, we always come up against skepticism. So, are we anti-female by focusing on male, boys, and men's issues? And so. The most important thing that we have to know how to do is to sort of also make this a women's issue. And one of the things that is really clear to me is that we are all in the same family boat. And whenever only one sex wins, both sexes lose. And what I mean by that is when a boy does not have a father, we know that the boy doesn't do well. We know that most girls don't do well. We know that they don't do well in 50 different areas. But what is stressed less frequently is that when I was, for 21 years, I was single between marriages, and almost all the women I dated had children. And the word I heard most frequently from those women was, I feel overwhelmed. I feel so overwhelmed. I can't do my work well. I can't raise the children the way I want to raise. But all of them were single mothers until one of them I married. And I hope I helped her unbecome a single mom. And so but the point there was that the women are overwhelmed. And when fathers are involved, we take that burden off of women. We share it with women. But we as men have to know what we bring to the family table. We have to know why roughhousing helps children develop empathy. We have to know the 9 differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting that I discussed in the Boy Crisis book. And we have to know how to conduct family dinner nights so that everybody at the family dinner feels heard. And opened up and are excited to come to the family dinner table. And so why now? Because we are seeing that that the boy crisis is so powerful in every developed nation, that boys are falling behind in every academic subject. That leads them to dropping out of high school much more frequently. That leads them, when they drop out of high school, to have an unemployment rate in the United States that exceeds 20%, 5 times the national average, until a few weeks ago. And so therefore the future of our country economically, the boys who hurt us, They're the ones that do the school shootings. They're the ones that do the ISIS recruits to have a different sense of purpose. So the problem has become so huge that the boy crisis is a lot like the coronavirus crisis. That at the beginning it didn't seem like much, but very quickly it spun out of control. And what we have with the boy crisis is a crisis that is invisible, but it is huge. And the moment you talk to a teacher in almost any school who spends a moment thinking about it, she verifies it or he verifies it.
Thank you. And then maybe could you share a little bit about if we don't work together, not to paint a gloom and doom scenario, but, what is this, the predictable, almost certain future if, intervention doesn't happen and if new actions aren't taken? Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah, we will leave boys doing worse economically, emotionally. We'll leave them so angry and because they're not achieving, that they will still continue to do the mass shootings. They will still be so angry at everyone that they will commit crimes and act out. They will continue to be the ones that join ISIS. Boys who hurt us. And if we don't do something about that, they will be hurting personally, and they will be hurting us, and they will be not available to be married to our daughters. And so our daughters will not have somebody that's worthy of their love. And we want that for our daughters. I have 2 daughters, the co-author of the Boy Crisis book. John Gray has 3 daughters. We want our daughters to have boys that are productive, successful, and that are worthy of their love. And so everyone loses. I was saying a minute ago, we're all in the same family boat. And one of the things we made a big mistake at is, as most of you know, that I was in the board of directors of the National Organization for Women in New York City, and I was deeply involved in the feminist movement. And we made a huge mistake suggesting that males have male privilege, and therefore men with the privilege didn't need to have any their issues did not need to be paid attention to. That was completely wrong. We men did earn more money, but we earned more money by giving up the things we wanted to do, like being teachers, like being musicians or artists, like starving artists, actors, and so on, and doing things that we felt needed to support the family. And then we had our willingness to earn more money and not be close to the family, experience the father's catch-22, the catch-22 of loving our family by being away from the love of our family. All of that was turned on its head, and we were accused of doing the thing that we had sacrificed ourselves to do. And so that's what we need to help women understand, and have men, like every man that's here, have the courage to stand up and say, yes, I support the hashtag #MeToo monologue, but there has to be a hashtag #MeToo dialogue. I support hashtag #MeToo, but not as a monologue, as a dialogue. And our voices need to be heard. And your daughters need men who can express their feelings, not repress their feelings.
Thank you, Warren. We just want to open it up to anyone who might have a question for Warren at the current moment. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our next portion. Is there anyone who has a burning question or comment?
Hey, Warren, it's Joe Sigurdson. How are you? Very nice to have you on this. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your insight. And I know that
Joe, can you also? I'm sorry, if you're speaking, can you also introduce yourself too? I know we have we have many leaders here in various domains of Boys to Men too. So if you can just share a little bit about who you are, and where you're coming from.
Okay, I am Joe Sigurdson, and I am the co-founder of Boys to Men, and I'm currently the community development director for Boys to Men San Diego. And this boy crisis is generational. It's been going on for a long time, and I know that you brought a lot of relevance to an increasingly conscientious nation, about what has been building and what has been going on, and for generations. And I think the tip of the spear was Columbine, in '99. And I know that I know that when we started Boys to Men, the first 2 trainings we just did kids in the neighborhood. So we knew all the kids and we knew the moms or the parents, and then Columbine happened. And after Columbine, the internet was brand new. We got called on to do some talk radio, and as if we were some sort of authorities, but at least we had a program called Boys to Men, and we were working with kids in our own neighborhood. And what happened was, we got a lot of single moms calling us over the next 3 days, like over 100. And the third training we didn't know any of those boys, and they all came from single moms, head of household, and they were all on medications, and they were all like from the like we thought we knew something about what we were doing. And that third training really gave us the scope of the boy crisis, and the disconnect and the lack of, as my friend Earl Hipp says, male nutrients in there. They're dying on the vine from lack of male nutrients, and that became very apparent on that third training, and those and the population we're working with in San Diego, well over half of our kids are fatherless kids. So there's a breakdown in the family for sure, but they're still here and they still need help, so we're trying to fill those gaps. I'll shut up. Thank you. Well, that's why we're here. Great to hear from you, Warren. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Really, you've just the work you're doing and your leadership in it, and you've been connected with the coalition to create the White House Council on Boys and Men, and out helping us go out there to Iowa to talk to some of the candidates when they were the Republican candidates running against President Obama. And so I really have appreciated your awareness that this is not just, it is a mentorship need. It is a need for boys and men for boys to have role models, but it is also a political need too. We have to have the courage to be activists. As when I finished the Boy Crisis book, it felt like it was immoral if I didn't also engage in activities as well, to political activities to make change happen. It's for me not okay to just write a book that documents the status of things and writes about the solutions. It then becomes a mandate for me internally to participate in doing the types of things that you're doing, is to make the country more aware of this and ultimately the world more aware of this.
Hi, Warren. This is Andy Lipnick. I'm here in San Francisco. I'm an active member in the Mankind Project. My question is around the term warrior. I mean, this is something very familiar, obviously, to myself and everybody in MKP. But that term, I think, for a lot of people in the country may have a negative connotation. And I suspect to move forward with this, there would have to be some education, obviously, around letting people know what that archetype really means. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions around that?
Yes, I think that what happens for me with warrior is that it piques interest. Like, what do you mean by warrior? And the curiosity, and then to be able, which then opens it opens the door for an answer. And the answer is that a warrior is somebody that overcomes social barriers, overcomes barriers to accomplish something. And boys and men have been trained for millions of years to not sort of open up about their feelings and their fears. They haven't been trained to be full-time fathers or to consider that option. They haven't been trained predominantly to be nurturers. And so, and when they did that, they were called names like to insult them. And so a person who's willing to confront insults, to overcome the social prejudices against him, to fight to be a father after a divorce, these are different types of warriors, and we need to, so it opens the door for me to explain that a warrior is not just somebody who fights. A warrior is also somebody who has courage, the courage to love, and the courage to say, I'm not just a traditional male. I'm not afraid to be a traditional male, but my personality is one that allows me and wants me to do something different with my life, that includes the nurturing and the caring, as well as the and the fathering, as well as the being the firefighters and being the construction workers and the saviors physically in our lives. Joe, does that sorry, not Joe, but yeah.
That does answer my question. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to introduce, I'm just an amazing filmmaker. His name is Frederick Marx. I would love to share with you a little bit about him. And then we're going to show a trailer of a movie that he's working on called Boys Become Men. So a little bit about Frederick. First of all, thank you so much for being here, Frederick. Quick FYI for the group, Warren had to unfortunately leave, so he's not with us. But if you have questions for Warren, please feel free to put it on the chat, and then we'll make sure everyone's connected after this group call, after tonight's event. So about Frederick, in 1993, Marx received an Emmy nomination for Higher Goals, which was created in 1992, for Best Daytime Children's Special. He was a producer, director, and writer for this national PBS special. Marx directed Tim Meadows of Saturday Night Live fame. Accompanied by a curriculum guide, the program was later distributed for free to over 4,200 inner city schools nationwide. Right, The Unspoken, which is a movie that came out in 1999, Marx's first feature film, features stellar performances from Russian star Sergei Shnerev of the famed Moscow Art Theater and Harry Lennox, most known for Get on the Bus, Bob Roberts, Titus, ER, and Matrix. A hobbyist songwriter, in '91, Marx recorded a number of his songs collectively known as Rolling Steel. Right, 2 of those 11 songs are used now over the Unspoken tail credits, and 1 is used in Boys to Men. The Unspoken and Rolling Steel are available through his website. 3 of Marx's films premiered at the New York Film Festival. His films are distributed throughout the web. This also includes, if you recall, a film called Hoop Dreams. His films are distributed throughout the web on Amazon and elsewhere. Having dedicated his life to the making and promotion of independent films, Marx, a true maverick in the increasing commercialized world of independent cinema, continues to provide a voice for artistic and social integrity. He brings a passion for appreciating the multiculturalism and an urgent empathy for the suffering of the disadvantaged to every subject that he tackles. As his mission statement indicates, bearing witness, creating change. His is a voice strong and clear and profoundly human. Before we have Frederick share a few words, we'd like to show you actually the full 7 minutes of his trailer. So with that, I'm gonna pass it to Matt here for the technicals.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Can I actually go ahead and jump in and just introduce it real quick?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, Frederick. Yes, please go for it.
Well, great, because for one thing that's important to say right off, to minimize confusion, is I made a TV miniseries called Boys to Men. And in 1999, I was reading articles about the Matthew Shepard murder, a gay young man in Wyoming, and also about the Columbine shootings. And I asked myself, what the heck is going on with young boys today? And I started reading and researching. And yes, Joe, you're absolutely right. You know, the boy crisis has existed. We're into the 2nd or even 3rd generation of it now. There's no question about it. I was reading Dr. William Pollack, Andrew Kipnis. I mean, so many writers. It's been over 20 years. I've forgotten most of their names at this point. So I went to Newark, New Jersey, and I started filming 15 and 16-year-old boys. And my series, again, is called Boys to Men, but it has a question mark at the end of it, because I was interested to see how are they transitioning into young adulthood. And of course, the story, as we all basically know at this point, is not very well. So that's where this idea came from. And it has nothing directly to do with the Boys to Men organization, although that came later. So I just wanted to say that. And if you're ready to go, then please roll it.
And the doctor said, you have a son. What does it take to go from a boy to a man? Try to figure it out, it's tripping me out.
I'd like to find that long lost map. That map that should have been, when I hit puberty, they should have handed to me. Since the first day, I've been looking for that map. That long lost. Here's your boyhood map. I'm hoping that I can find someone who can help me and send me in the right direction.
When a culture doesn't provide formal rites of passage or initiations, people find their own, or they don't find them and never really find the traction of their life.
I wish that, I'd grown up with a male in the house other than myself. Someone to even out the numbers, someone to be a man, be a guy. So you can hang out and do guy stuff. So they can hang out and do girl stuff. I mean, that's what I wish.
One of the functions of initiation is to bring the young people fully into the community. And there, of course, is a longing for that. And it's in all the young people I see. It's in the colleges, but it's also in the street gangs.
There's nothing more satisfying than just knocking the crap out of some guy and looking down at him and just like, I did that. It made me forget about all those, bad times.
I was ready to get him out of the house. He had run away from home. Some of the things my son has done would warrant him getting kicked out in some households.
I guess I just kind of pushed it back to the back of my mind because I'm starting to feel it again, like a resounding disappointment in myself.
This opportunity to do the Boys to Men came up, and it's my last hope. And if it doesn't work for me, then the next step is Jeremy going with his dad.
Start to think about what your mission is, what you want to do.
This is the time where Jeremy, you decide, what kind of father do I want to be? What kind of grandfather do I want to be? And you have an opportunity. The world is open to you. We're proud of you. You're a real leader. I want to thank you for letting me be your grandpa.
See that? That's where it come down. That's the kind of leader men want to follow. That have their little boy. So proud of you.
You're a great young man. I'm so proud of you. You walked into some leadership this weekend too, man. You feel it? Yeah.
A lot of people go through a lifetime and never have anybody say, hey, I love you. And I want to say to you, big man, I love you. I love you for what you are.
I love those guys.
I've been searching for help for some time because it's been quite a struggle. When he came back, my son openly communicated with me his feelings, which is the first time he's ever done that. And I have to thank you for trying and for honoring me by trying. And you are the best. I love you.
My brother, he talks a lot. It's as if he had two mouths and one ear.
Jay's biggest challenge is patience. He needs more patience with himself and with his brother.
She knows all these moves so she can beat up people and that stuff. He's like, wow, what's up with you in movies? And Dad, can you stop
having your expectations so high. Because sometimes I don't feel like waking up in the morning because it's going to be a hard day and everything.
Yeah, I can do this. And I will stop putting such pressure on you and high expectations because you're perfect just the way you are. You are absolutely perfect just the way you are, Jay. An angel. An angel from God. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being my son.
Love you, Dad.
I love you, Jay. Love you. Always.
Never had that from his dad.
I tend to be a dictator at home and pushing him in directions that I feel he should be going. We just shared tears together for a half hour on that rock, telling each other we love each other. And that's a bond that'll never be broken.
Anybody that's doing anything that recognizes and blesses the unique inherent qualities of young people probably is doing some good, because the general cultural atmosphere is to deny that. And that creates an unnecessary wound in young people. Young people don't feel well.
Thank you, Frederick. You're on mute. Let me unmute you there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So I left off in the middle of my introduction, totally forgetting what it was we were going to look at. So that was not from this TV miniseries called Boys to Men. In the middle of making that TV series, I realized I was making a statement of the problem, and I needed to make a film about solutions. And so that's when I began this project, Boys Become Men. And the whole idea was to feature people like Joe and Craig, the founders of the Boys to Men organization, who are doing this beautiful mentorship and rite of passage work with adolescent boys in order to grow them into their fullness as adult men. And so we filmed that, I think it was 2005 in San Diego, but Joe might remember better than I.
It was, Frederick. And
okay.
Jay is now a doctor.
Lovely. Beautiful.
Yeah, he's interning right now. Yeah, it was beautiful watching that. So, yeah.
Great. Well, so the whole idea was to make, a feature-length documentary that was, again, the sequel to my Boys to Men film that highlighted all of these people and programs that are making solutions. So I'd like to now shift a little bit and just tell you a little bit about, some of what I've learned in the last 25 years of looking at this work and thinking about it and making films about it. My colleague and friend Warren Farrell, I think, did a beautiful job in kind of laying out the sociological landscape for boys in society. And I want to shift a little bit and talk about the individual development perspective, what you might think of as the psychodynamics or the mythological and archetypal perspective. From some of my great teachers who were Dr. Robert Moore and Robert Bly, who really first opened my eyes to a lot of these issues about the importance of mentorship and rites of passage for boys. So before going there, though, I have to digress for a second because I've been so intensely engaged on the sideline here in the conversation that's taken place so far tonight. as you noticed, my company is Warrior Films. So I have been for 25 years engaged in that challenge of trying to reappropriate that term warrior into something that is actually noble and actually extremely positive, to diverge and divest its meaning from its common association with soldier, with someone who follows orders and then goes off to kill, by and large, or be killed. So for me, I've always emphasized that it means samurai. It means like Knights of the Round Table. It means a person who is an autonomous actor, who is not necessarily following orders. Yes, following the service of a king or queen, following the service of someone who is making sovereign leadership decisions. Yes. But also as an autonomous actor who's constantly asking him or herself, is what I'm doing ethical? Is what I'm doing honorable? Is what I'm doing moral? So those things are hugely important to me. And actually, if you go to my site, warriorfilms.org, you'll see a number of quotes there directly addressing this issue of warriors. So here's one of them from Sitting Bull. Warriors are not what you think of as warriors. The warrior is not someone who fights, because no one has the right to take another life. The warrior is one who sacrifices for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves, and above all, the children, the future of humanity. So that was Sitting Bull, who said that about 150 years ago. So there's a number of other quotes that we have on the site to talk about how it is we're reappropriating and redefining warrior and what it means. Well, in fact, here's a quick one from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, one of my great Buddhist teachers. To be a spiritual warrior, one must have a broken heart. Without a broken heart and the sense of tenderness and vulnerability, your warriorship is untrustworthy. That's certainly what I've found in my life. So I want to take just a couple quick minutes and tell you a little bit about my own story and how it is I got to these issues. And so when I was 9 years old, my dad suddenly died of a heart attack. And on the way to the funeral, my uncle, his younger brother, he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, well, Freddie, you're the man of the house now. And you better believe, however dysfunctional we may think that statement to be, you know, saying a 9-year-old boy, you're the father of the family now to your own mother and your own older sister and younger brother, you better believe I wanted to be that man. I wanted desperately to be that man, as all young boys do. They want to accept responsibility of caretaking and well-being for those that they love. So my uncle didn't stick around, however, to mentor me and show me how to become that man. And during adolescence, no other men showed up to mentor me and show me how. And so I got into drugs and all kind of risk-taking like many other adolescents, and fortunately got out of adolescence without harming myself or others. And in young adulthood, I found myself drawn to the company of gay men and women. Why? Because unconsciously I recognized my feelings, my deep and rich emotional life was actually safer with gay men and with women than it was with my peers with other straight men. So cut to 2 weeks prior to my 40th birthday, like many of you on this call, I did the Mankind Project weekend in Chicago, 1995, the New Warrior Training Adventure. And since that time, I've now spent the last 25 years studying mature masculinity. What does it take to become the man that I want to be? So I tend to think of mentorship and rites of passage very much like Bill's share at the very beginning of our time together here tonight. The boy dies in order for the man to be born, right? They're two halves of one whole. So in an ideal social context, a community context, every boy would have a mentor, yes, who is not his father, by the way, because Greek mythology, among many other sources, were very clear about this, that parents cannot mentor their children. It needs to be someone else. So they would have both mentorship and healthy, community-based, pro-social rites of passage, so that they wouldn't have to unconsciously try to act out a rite of passage through excess drinking, speeding and driving, domestic violence, all of this, the sort of dysfunctional ways that boys try to prove that they're actually men. And like Warren, in fact, we talked about this very issue. I see boys joining ISIS and boys like the Columbine killers doing what they do as a dysfunctional attempt at initiation. They're actually trying to prove to the world that they are men, that they can actually face death, including their own death and the death of others. Now, believe me, they're doing it in the most counterproductive ways ever. But I get the source of the impetus for why they're doing this. They want to become men, and they want to be seen as a man among men in communities. So anyway, so that's a little bit of my story. So one of the things that I'd like to share with you today briefly is what I see as some of the key markers of what it takes for a boy to matriculate into mature masculinity. Now, the first I would talk about is accountability and integrity. I believe, and this is certainly my own experience, not only in my own life, but from all of the men that I've met and worked with over the years, men want to be men of honor. They want to be able to hold their heads high and go, yes, I'm a man who does what he says he's going to do. I fulfill my commitments, and people can trust me. And that's how they assume that peership in a community as a man among men. So accountability and integrity, I think, are really essential. We've already talked about this one, emotional awareness, EQ, right? And of course, that lack of awareness gets reinforced by the coding mechanisms from dominant culture, from peers, and sometimes even parents. But these days, it's interesting because boys are told your feelings are okay. So the culture has really shifted a lot in the last 20 years. But they're not taught when and how to effectively access those feelings and allow them to flow through their body so that they don't have to carry them. They don't get stuck like a river behind a dam. So especially, when it comes to anger, for example. In fact, what I see with a lot of boys these days is that they're shamed out of being angry. They're told that it's somehow they're lesser as human beings because they feel anger, rather than saying, oh, you're angry, no problem. It's normal to be angry, great. Here are some productive things we can do. I suggest you go in your room and you can hit your pillows. I want you to scream and yell. I want you to do everything you need to do to get it out of your system so that you're not carrying these feelings around, which can become dangerous to you and others later on. So they're not taught these mechanisms. A third thing that's essential is what I would call mission, or what we call mission in MKP, but you might think of it as life purpose. And as Warren himself mentioned, when boys know that they're needed as warriors, as leaders, making a difference in the world, they are fulfilled. And so it's really important, and that's an essential function of a healthy rite of passage, is introducing, and not only boys, it's true for girls as well, to what might be their essential life purpose. Because my experience is, and everything that I've read and learned, is that each one of us has some unique essential life purpose. And we have to be awakened to that purpose. We have to be helped to understand what that is. A common term for that is gifts. Each of us has unique gifts, and we have to be clear on what they are so that we can bring forth to the world and give them freely so that the community, the village, benefits from them. The Native Americans use the term medicine, and I like that in some ways even better, because think of it as if each one of us has a unique medicine, nobody in their right mind is going to withhold that medicine when there's sick people out there who are desperately needing it. So a fourth thing is shadow. I think it's really essential that every human being become intimate with his or her own shadows. And this term comes from Carl Jung, who was a student of Sigmund Freud. And one of the things that makes it absolutely essential in understanding this is that there aren't good and bad people in the world. But what there are, in my personal view, there are people who understand deeply their own shadows, and they keep them in front of them so they don't act unconsciously out of those shadows and hurt other people and hurt themselves. As opposed to people who have no awareness of their own shadows and think, hey, everything I do is fantastic. And if people don't understand it, the hell with them. You know, there's something wrong with them. Well, we know we have plenty of people like that. So a deep understanding of your own darkness, of your own, everything you might say, the truth about yourself that you hide, repress, and deny. Okay, these are our shadows. We must know these. And the last thing is living with men cooperatively, in community. We have to learn how to do that because the culture teaches us the opposite. The culture teaches us to live competitively with men, that we have to compete with men for scarce resources of women, of money, of shelter, of work, whatever it is, compete, compete, compete. No, this is absolutely dysfunctional, and not only for the individual, of course, but for the community as a whole. We have to learn how to cooperate. So I've said a lot. Let me bookmark my remaining thoughts right there and open to your questions and comments.
It's beautiful. We have a couple of updates, team updates to share, and then we also want to field a couple questions, and then we want to hear from just a few people before we wrap up. So a quick team update is we have thank you all for your generous donations. This is just one of those that update. We've raised about almost $1,300, a little bit more than that. So we have about $1,150 left to go to hit our 2,500 mark and have that matched. Frederick, thank you so much for everything, just all of your words of wisdom. Let's open the floor up to maybe a question or two, and then we'd like to hear from kind of our Voice to Men USA leaders, and then we'll complete. So does anybody have a burning question or comment that they'd like to add? And I'd like to hear from all of you. So if you'd like to add a comment or anything, 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm seeing no questions here. I think everyone's digesting all of the, the juiciness of wisdom that was just dropped. So we'd like to pass the baton over to, there's two really amazing, oh, yes, Chris, I wanted to get back to you. I've noticed that Chris has his hand raised, and anybody else who would like to have their hand raised or just share anything. So Chris, go ahead.
I think, I don't know how this ties in with masculinity, but I think one thing that is definitely can be true about what's happening right now is that we have an extremely serious crisis in leadership. And I don't know how we got to this point, and I will fully disclose, I work for hospitals, and I will say this right now, my immediate supervisors are pretty good guys, but above that, I wouldn't trust them to organize anything. And that's part of the problem here. These so-called authorities have wrecked the healthcare system. It has no agility and no flexibility, which could handle a pandemic. And then we've got a frat boy and a 70-year-old body in the White House, and most of the governors probably aren't much better. Ted Kennedy was a frat boy who was a senator too. He never got, and of course, he drives off a bridge and kills a woman. I mean, if you transported the Americans from 150 years ago to now, every single governor would be hanging from a tree. I sincerely believe that. Every governor in the country. But we just roll it, and that's the thing though. They want people that they can control, that will just roll over and play dead.
Well, Chris, I can certainly relate to your frustration and anger. I mean, there's no question that we have a dearth of real responsible leadership in our society, not only in our government, in our corporations,
yes,
and in many institutions. And, you know, I would attribute this largely to a lack of mentorship and healthy rites of passage. I think that, well, Robert Bly told me when I spoke with him, he said, you know, in Africa, Frederick, they would never allow someone to become president who was not initiated. Never. They wouldn't even think of it because they would know that that person is not a mature man. So, and in fact, this relates also to something that was touched on earlier tonight by Warren about daughters marrying husbands. You know, one of the things that I've learned in my research is that in Thailand, what's common for boys for their initiation is 19, 20 years old, they go into a Buddhist monastery for a year and they undertake service. And they are the lowest of the low of the totem pole in the monastery, and they do service for a year. And what I understand is that no woman in her right mind in Thailand ever marries a man who has not done that service, who has not been initiated into the meaning of culture and community through his rite of passage.
Well, the Mormons have something like that with the missions.
Yes,
You
no,
know.
it's true. And there are many sort of functional remaining, you know, Catholic confirmation, Jewish bar mitzvah. I mean, to some extent, some of these traditions exist. But I would argue that a lot of the dominant cultural ones to this day have been emptied of their real psychic transformation potential. Why? Because they've been co-opted by consumer culture. And so for me personally, when I was 13 and all my friends were being bar mitzvahed, my Jewish friends, there was one question that would always be asked: what did you get? Meaning, do you get a car? You get a college scholarship? Do you get a $10,000 check? It was all about money. It was all about materialism. It was about consumption. Nobody was asking that young man, how are you different? How have you died to the boy that you once were and become reborn as a man who understands his function and need for cooperation in community? And I'll shut up with one last statement. And this is a quote that I learned from Africans, that if we do not initiate the young, they will burn down the village to feel the heat. Well, look around. We've got a lot of villages burning down because we have uninitiated men in particular, but also women to a lesser degree, in leadership around the world.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you, Chris. You know, there's a lot of really great energy that I'm hearing on the call. There's a lot of movement. We do want to keep moving because we've already been over time. So I want to respect all of that. And at the same time, thank you, Frederick. Thank you for all the speakers who've spoken today. We've put an email out there, boystomen@gmail.com. Let us know if you have any questions. Next, there's just 3 more people we'd like to hear from. One is Michael Bonahan, who is our director in Hawaii. Second is Joe Sigurdsson, who is our director and one of the, we've all heard from him briefly earlier. And then also lastly will be Ernie McNabb. Ernie, I know you're on the call, and thank you so much for being with us still on the call. Ernie, I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself a little bit and maybe share just a minute or two about the value of mentorship in your life, and then we'll wrap up. So with that, let's pass the baton to Michael. Go ahead.
Aloha. Hi, Michael Bonahan, President, Chairman of Boys to Men USA. Super excited about everybody on the call. And I want to thank the speakers and everyone's input in the chat rooms and the insightful questions. We really outlined the problem, you know, what the crisis is, what we're facing. It's been out there for generations. And we've also talked about what the solutions are. And the biggest solution you can see right in front of you. Look at the faces on this screen. I just want to honor and recognize everybody from the support from Girls to Women, Women Within, Mankind Project, the White House Coalition for the White House Council on Boys to Men, and of course, Boys to Men USA. Just thank all of you for showing up and being warriors of the heart that it takes to transform the world. And in this moment of transformation that we're all in, as we're all in our Corona cocoons right now, I just invite you to use this struggle as a way to metamorphosize yourself into how you can take responsibility for our youth moving forward in the future. And if you want to partner in that, I'm here, and all these men on the call, and some of these women on the call are here for you as well. So thanks again. Lots of love and much aloha, much praise. Thank you so much. And way to go, Bay Area. I'm out.
Thank you, Michael, for all your mentorship and leadership. With that, Joe, would you like to share a few words? And then we'll go to Ernie.
I think Michael did an eloquent job. It's so fantastic that we've got guys like Michael and Dave Bolduc and the communities that have built and sustained and maintained and for them and all of us are more than willing to share how we did it. And you get to stand on some shoulders, Parth, and I'm happy to offer mine, and I'm stoked for the work that's going on that you and Matt are carrying the torch for, and so bless that work. And really want to thank Warren for bringing his wisdom, and Frederick for yours. Thank you for your brilliant perspective and your gift for communicating the exact nature of the beast. So I'll just say really nice to be with you all, and I love you, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Joe. Ernie, with that, we'd like to pass the baton over to you.
Hey, so very, very impressed about what I've heard this evening. And when I was 3 years old, my father died of a heart attack, 13 days before Christmas. And I had a younger brother that was 2 years old. And I had two sisters, one that was 5 years old and one was 6 years old. So we were all very, very young. And when my father died, I also lost my mother at the same time because they didn't have any money. So my mother had to go to work. So I can really relate to the work you're all doing. And I remember when I was 10 years old, I remember my mother, in line with what Frederick just said a little earlier, I remember her saying, you're your brother's dad. So I'm 10 and he's 9, and I am supposed to be his dad. So I'm supposed to, and I'm responsible for his well-being, because if anything happens to him, I'm going to be in big trouble. So I'm so grateful for what you're all doing. I have a foundation, and my foundation had pledged to match money that you would have up to $2,500. So if you could get $2,500, I would match that. You'd have $5,000. I've decided I'm going to raise that. So I'm going to raise that from $2,500 to $5,000. So if you can get $5,000, you'll have $10,000. Yeah. So thank you very much, and it was a real honor to witness what you all had to say this evening.
Wow, thank you so much, Ernie. I'm speechless. Just
thank you, Ernie.
All of you elders, on the call, and just your generous hearts and just your selfless love. Thank you all. I think we are about time. I wish we had another 3 hours. We could spend more time together. So I think the last thing to be said is we'll just do a one-word checkout. By the way, thank you everyone for the inquiry around the donation link here, managing the chat. Thank you all. But let's check out. So, whether it's a word or whether it's a phrase, I think we have a sense of relatedness on the call, and we see people's names. So we just pass the baton over. So I'll begin. Gratitude and love.
Meaning and gratitude.
Inspired. Great work, everybody.
Catherine says compassion and love. And
gratitude and purpose. And I'll pass it to Mark Sutton.
Thank you, Michael. I would also say gratitude and excitement too. Thank you to everyone. And with that, I'm out. I'll pass it over to Bernsey.
Thank you, Mark. I'd say hope, and I'll pass it on to Michael Mora.
A sense of community,
a sense of connection to a broader community. Thank you.
I would like to say connected and brotherhood.
Well, this was very interesting. I do appreciate the time. Thank you.
I said I'm feeling very, very inspired, grateful, and purpose-driven. Thank you.
I'd just like to express a lot of gratitude, extremely grateful for all the wonderful work that you're doing on behalf of just boys and men in general.
Yeah, so I'm feeling like we're all in this together.
In this time of extreme disconnection, I'm feeling extreme connection and love.
I see a shift in going from just a very low level of hope to a real possibility of success with our next generation.
I'm feeling inspired and inspirational. I will pass it to Jamie.
Joy and blessings, gratitude for all of your dedication and giveaway to this work. I'll pass it to Miguel.
I came off feeling inspired and full of courage to give, and I'm going to pass it off to William Triggs.
Feeling a lot of gratitude to be sitting with a tribe of people that are willing to put their time and their hearts to solve this really important problem. So thank you everybody for showing up today. And thanks to my brothers in San Francisco Boys to Men.
I'm inspired. I'm grateful to everybody on this call who clearly thinks not only with their head, but with their heart.
I'm leaving here inspired with a full heart.
So everyone, I think we are complete, unless there's anyone who has not gone yet. We want to just thank you on behalf of Boys to Men Bay Area, on behalf of Boys to Men USA, more importantly, on behalf of the work that we're all doing. We're all working in our own forms and structures, yet our hearts and our essence is unified. Questions, concerns, anything like that, or hey, if you have an event, how can we support you? Please email us at boystomenbayarea@gmail.com. Thank you all. We love you and have a great night.
Please do sign up. Give us your contact info if you want to stay in touch. There was a lot of great conversation and energy in this room, and I would love to set up something where we can explore some of these topics deeper when we have more time. So please be in touch.